Newman City Council Redevelopment Agency regular meeting of September 27th to order, please. Please stand for the pledge. Ready to begin?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilman Hutchins, please.
Father, we thank you for this privilege tonight that we have to come and to deal with your business. We just ask that you'll give the council wisdom and knowledge and just help us to get through this. And we just praise you and thank you. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Davis.
Present.
Hutchins.
Present?
Candia.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Martina.
Present.
Mayor Casey.
Present. Item 5, declaration of conflicts of interest. Seeing none, we'll go to item 6, ceremonial matters. Seeing none, we'll go to item 7, items from the public, non-agenda items. Any member of the public wish to address the council? Go to item 8, consent calendar. A is waive all readings of ordinances and resolutions set by title. B is approval of the warrants. C is approval of the minutes of September 13, 2011 regular meeting.
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 9, public hearing. A is conduct a public hearing regarding the Supplemental Law Enforcement Services Fund, also known as SLEF, and authorize expenditures for this funding, AB 1913.
Evening, Mayor, council members. Before you tonight is the SLEFs. Yeah, there you go, whatever you want to call it. The city is scheduled to receive $100,000 in funding from the state of California as part of Assembly Bill 1913. Funding, also referred to as the Supplemental Law Enforcement Service Fund. We've received this funding for the past 10 years. The requirements of this program mandate the funds be spent on frontline needs of municipal police services. A public hearing be held, which was what we're doing here, and the funding is to supplement and not supplant items in the budget. The final requirement is the funds be spent by June 30th, 2012, with any remaining funds be returned to the state of California. During the building of the budget fiscal year 11-12, these funds were not anticipated. Last year was anticipated to be the last year of this funding. With the signing of Assembly Bill 89, the state redirected VLF, Vehicle License Fund, revenues to fund the state law enforcement COPS grant. We currently lose $37,884 in VLF revenues in exchange for the $100,000, the minimum amount in COPS grant funding. These additional funds supplement existing items in the budget. There is no fiscal impact as these do not require a match. And if you go to attachment A, it will show you what we are going to use these funds for. $10,000 covers funding for overtime to cover the cost of the increased coverage of officers in the field, additional patrols, such as significant investigations, training, special events, and other community needs. These funds are essential to maintain a minimum staffing level on patrol. The other $90,000 will be for emergency dispatch. These funds will assist in the ongoing funding of the contractual emergency dispatch services provided by Stanislaus Regional 911. The cost of these essential services continues to escalate based on improved technology and salaries provided by regional 911 staff. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Any questions of the chief before we open the public hearing? Go ahead.
What the emergency dispatch was already funded through the general fund, was it not? In this year's upcoming budget?
It is.
So are we supplanting $90,000 that's already through the general fund now to go to emergency dispatch?
That's a good point. In the past, we've used it that way. I didn't pick up on that, Councilman. So maybe we need to bring this back to you and see what else we can look at then.
Especially if it's already budgeted.
Right.
Yeah, I don't want to lose this money.
We agree. Let us get back to you on that one. I apologize.
Okay,
So
should we table this then?
Yes. Why don't we?
I'm sorry. Continue the public hearing.
Yes. We'll bring it
Okay.
back at our next meeting.
Okay. We'll then continue this public hearing until our next regular meeting. So I need a motion to continue the public hearing.
Make a motion to continue.
I second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And we will continue to our next meeting, Chief. Thank you. 10, regular business. A is adopt resolution number 2011, next to number, a resolution awarding the contract to George Osner, AICP, for CEQA services in relation to the WWTP expansion for amount not to exceed $12,000 and authorize the city manager to execute said contract.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Before you is a resolution to award a contract for CEQA services for the proposed wastewater treatment plant expansion. In early September, the city released an RFP for CEQA services to assess potential environmental impacts and to include said analysis into the city's report of waste discharge to the Regional Water Quality Control Board. 3 proposals were received. Of those 3, George Osner has been recommended by staff due to his extensive regional experience and environmental review experience. The CEQA services have been budgeted in this fiscal year's budget under the Capital Sewer Impact Fee Fund. Therefore, staff recommends that the council adopt resolution 2011 next to number, awarding a CEQA contract to George Osner for services in relation to the proposed wastewater treatment plant expansion. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of Stephanie? Council direction?
I move that we adopt resolution 211, next number, a resolution awarding a contract to George Osner, AICP, for CEQA services in relation to WWTP expansion for a not to exceed amount of $12,000 and authorizing the city manager to execute said contract.
I'll second that motion.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item B, authorize city manager to enter into a 1-year contract with AJM Property Management.
Thank you, Mayor. As you recall, in July of this year, we purchased the Oddfellows building, also known as the IOOF building, located at 938 Fresno Street. It's a 2-story building. In the current plans, the City Hall, City Administration, City Public Works plans to occupy the 2nd floor. On the downstairs floor, we have 7 ground level suites. Currently, the project has been for the last 5 years managed by Stevens and Borelli. Also known, they've changed their name now to Property Management of AJM. So they've been doing it for about the last 5 to 6 years. In an effort to continue to allow us to just keep moving forward with our move upstairs and focus on that, we're asking that you allow staff to enter into a 1-year agreement with AJM for property management services. Based upon their local knowledge and their experience with the building, we think a 1-year contract is fair for both sides. It allows us to see how they manage the property under our ownership, see how they respond to the tenants. It does not commit us long-term. I was just talking to the city attorney on that. There is a box that we can put a 30-day out in that 1-year contract if for whatever reason something doesn't feel comfortable or something arises that we need to get out of that contract. So with that, we would ask that you authorize the city manager to enter into that 1-year contract with respect to the ground level suites for the Oddfellows buildings. The fees associated with this contract are really an 8% management fee on the gross income. They're not collecting money on if they're not rented, we're not paying. So right now there's 4 that aren't rented, so we wouldn't be paying any fee for them to manage the 4 that aren't rented. There's a one-time leasing fee that the tenant will pay, and that's really covering negotiations and a lot of the other things that go back and forth. With the experience, we just negotiated a lease with State Farm Insurance, Michael Prassarelli. That was one of those ones where the deal went back and forth 3 or 4 different times, and it took place over a 2-week period. So it's not just sign a piece of paper and be done. There's some due diligence that has to be required. You have to do credit checks and a few other things that are required on it. The contract does require us, if there was any need for eviction, we would be subject to all those fees. And then for any repairs that are managed by the broker, repairs that maybe he's calling somebody in, and it's usually typically something under $500. He would broken window or water line. He would just manage it. He would add a 10% admin fee on top of that. If it's anything larger than that, and there's something that we can manage, there's no additional administrative fee on top of that contract. So again, we believe a 1-year contract is a good start for us. That'll take us through, this time next year. By that time, all of City Hall and Public Works will be moved into the building. We anticipate that, that'll be about the time probably when we can get the chamber all organized, and then we can reevaluate how the service was provided. It also, from a city's perspective and from a staff's perspective, it keeps us at an arm's distance from the leasing perspective of it, and us having to deal with tenants below. Usually it's good to have a third party deal with that instead of the city manager and or individual members of the council getting calls. And if you do get calls, you can just refer them to a property manager. So with that, as I mentioned, AJM Property has managed the property for the last over 5 years. They are a locally owned property management company, so we recommend we do a 1-year contract with them and then evaluate it at that time. So I can answer any questions you may have.
Michael, I have a couple. Are these fees in line with what we would see from any other type of?
They're consistent with what he was getting before with the previous owner. So we were just inheriting his contract with him. There's not a lot of commercial property management companies in town, so it's hard to go on it. So we just accepted that was the fee he was getting with his previous landlord, with the owners, so we just wanted to extend it for 1 year.
That's a very consistent fee.
It's very consistent, okay.
And another question I had, what the square footage as far as the fee, what are they charging?
They don't charge,
What I'm saying,
their fee is not per square foot. Now, we've worked out some rents on the individual suites, and the square footage cost per suite is a little bit different depending on the location. They range anywhere from probably mid-80s cents a foot to, I think Passarelli, after the first year, is going to be paying about $1 a foot.
my concern is, I'd rather see the building rented than not. What I'm saying is, I would rather see people that are long-term. And what I'm concerned about, if it's too expensive, you're not going to see people move in there.
Bob, I think you're going to. We have, so far we have, Lisa Forbes is a long-term tenant. Michael Passarelli signed a 10-year agreement, 2 5-year agreements. I think you're going to see a lot of long-term tenants in there. I know there's another barber shop that's interested, and another business expressed some interest. I think we're going to be fine. I think especially once people really start seeing us move in there, I think you're going to see that the rents are commensurate with a long-term tenant.
Okay. I just want to be competitive with what's going on in the city.
Yes, we are I think we're very competitive. It's a very good deal.
But you say there's no such thing as a square footage. It depends on the location in the building?
Well, no, I'm saying each suite has a different per square foot cost to them. So, for instance, if you're on that corner of Fresno and Main, you're paying a little bit more per square foot than you are if you're on the alley on Fresno.
Okay.
You get better exposure, it's higher visibility, so depending on where you're at in the building, the rents differ just a little bit. Not too much though.
Okay, and then you said there is a 30-day out?
We will put a 30-day notice in required for both sides. If he wants out, he can get out. If we want out, we can get out.
Michael, are we already collecting rents?
Yes,
from
we
the
are.
people that are in there?
Yes. We just
Through them or?
Through them. We've been doing it on a handshake deal.
Oh, okay.
We've been doing it on them. I mean, it was hard for us to come back in. It's hard for us. So we've been doing it on a handshake deal. We just wanted to memorialize it in a 1-year contract. So, and I know our finance director, Lou, has talked with the person in charge of their finances over there, and they've made arrangements to figure out how to, take care of services over there and how the rent's going to come back to us and when it does and those types of things.
The only other question I would have is who's responsible for maintenance and everything in those suites as we rent them out? Us, the maintenance company, or the tenant?
If it is leased out, it's the tenant. The tenant is responsible for general maintenance of their own suite.
Okay, because I know a lot of places, if there's plumbing problems, if there's electrical problems, if there's things like that.
Well, yeah, those would be above and beyond just the general maintenance. If there's repairs to plumbing and electrical, that would be on us as the owner of the property. If it's a small one, AJ Property Management would use one of their contractors to come in and take care of that situation for us. If it's a large problem, he'll come in and say, hey, he'll talk to myself and or Gardner and say, hey guys, we got a big leak here. This is going to go way over $500. Do you guys want to handle that through your people, or do you want us to take care of it for you? And then it'll go that direction.
I guess one of the reasons I asked that question is if we say we get into something that's $3,000 or $4,000, is there a limit? Are we going to have to go out to RFPs on stuff like that? And
We have a $5,000 limit, and if it's an emergency, which most of them are, if you're going to have that kind of problem, first of all, the building's under a 1-year warranty, so there's still some warranty stuff that that if we're having that kind of problems on a new building, because essentially it is a new building, then we're going to have to go back to the contractor and say, hey, this is way out of line, and you're going to need to come back and fix that under your warranty.
Michael, another question. If someone comes in and they lease one of those locations, and let's say they add on to it. Let's say, for instance, the cleaner adds on. And during the process they're in there, let's say something happens to that, where there's damage occurs, who's responsible for that? Would that tenant be responsible for anything that occurred that they installed?
Yes, if they're putting up non-bearing walls, they have to return the suite to the state at which they rented it.
Okay. But we wouldn't be responsible, let's say they added sinks and things like that in there and stuff like that, we wouldn't be responsible for the maintenance of those items.
No. If they came in and did that. Now, part of what we want to make sure of, and this is some of the conversations that's taking place, though, is we want our contractors to do the work. You don't want to just let anybody come into your building and try to put in a sink or something. That's something that we want to control, and who the contractors are that work inside those suites and do some of those work. Now, if it's a non-bearing wall, partition type thing, hey, frame it up, that's not a big issue. But you start dealing with electrical and plumbing, they have to get our authorization on who the contractors are.
That's all. I don't have
Any other questions? Michael, you mentioned that there's the possibility that we have another possible tenant of the barber shop. Has there been any other interest expressed?
There's been a few people that have expressed interest with, because I don't want to divulge on who
That's
the
fine.
individuals are, but there's a series of businesses local that are already existing, and some that that would be new to our community.
And as part of the property management, do they actually try to go out and find tenants for us type of thing?
Yeah, they advertise it.
Good.
So, and then we're going to utilize the alliance as well.
Good. Any other questions? Okay, with that, council direction?
I'd make a motion, we authorize the city manager to enter into a 1-year contract with AJM Property Management, Inc.
I second that motion.
Did we put that 30-day out in there?
We can. I think we should put the 30 day.
I think we should too.
Yeah.
Want to
we
amend
need-
your motion
Uh,
that we add the 30-day? Clause?
I'll amend the motion, a friendly amendment to,
You must have been to the league conference.
that's right.
Second motion, third motion, motion on the motion. Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah.
That we add the 30-day clause in there. Thank you, Bob.
Okay.
I second that.
Motion and a
If it
second.
needs to be seconded, I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. C is discussion regarding the Stanislaus County Mayor's agricultural preservation map.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll discuss that, and then I just want to give you a brief update. We're kind of up against the deadline for the SLEF, so we have our staff actively working right now through our budget. We want to maybe bring that back tonight if we can. It really is an item that we need to take action on tonight, so they're looking through our budget to find areas there that aren't necessarily
Okay, do you want?
supplanting as much as they are saying, look, these are extras above and beyond what we're doing as an organization and as a department.
Mhm.
So we're going to ask that those be used
But
for those costs.
I understood that we weren't expecting to get this money. That's why it was budgeted.
That's correct.
And now we're getting essentially a gift.
That's correct, and that's what happened is in the past, we've used the money for dispatch services and overtime. but we built our budget using that money. Now we had to adopt a budget without that money. So in our mind, it's not really supplanting because we've always used it for those ones. So
they're helping the delinquency that we had.
correct. So anyways, if you don't mind, maybe we go through item C here, and then we can maybe come back to that if the city attorney will allow us at that time.
Well, actually, you have to, well, you have
You
to
going
do
to
that.
which item?
C.
We're gonna go to C first.
We're gonna complete C, then we'll go back to item A under public hearings. The public hearing's been continued, so we can go back to it. Okay, go ahead, Michael, on
Thank
C.
Over the last couple of years, I know our mayor has been actively working with his mayor's group. And first it was Supervisor Grover, and now it's Supervisor O'Brien. Part of the discussion that they've been talking about is how can we regionally work together to preserve ag land. You know, ag is a very important industry in our county. I know there's a lot of groups out there that would like to see some of that preserved. There's a lot of discussion going on right now with LAFCO about adopting a mandatory ag mitigation ordinance that says if you develop 1 acre of ag land with a commercial, residential, or an industrial use, you have to buy a permanent conservation easement for ag within the county somewhere. One of the problems with that is ultimately you can only save 50% of the land. So what the mayors have talked about, and they forward this item on to the city managers group, who came up with the idea, is if we establish growth boundaries around cities and say, okay, this is where Newman's going to grow over the next X number of years. And you put all those cities on a map, right? And the county will put a couple of their county areas on there, like Crow's Landing and Diablo Grande and Salida and a few other ones. Those will be in white, and the rest of the map shows up in green. And everything else that's in green is ag preservation. It's supposed to be ag for the next number of years. Well, recently we went to another workshop. Again, the mayors were there as well as the city managers, and we furthered this discussion, I think, pretty long. What we would like to see then propose is, and again, through the mayors, with the cooperation with city managers, is proposing a map to our electorate, countywide map to the electorate as an ag preservation map. Again, the city boundaries would be in white, everything else would be in green. All the growth for commercial, residential, and industrial would be directed to the white areas. So with that being said, is what we would like you to consider is the map is a 2050 ag preservation map. So what would our boundary be? How big would we grow by 2050? So this is our general plan. This is our general plan map. You can see there's two colors here. You got the laser doesn't work there. There's two different boundaries. The multicolored boundaries inside that area, that's our sphere of influence. Okay? That's basically showing what we think. So the boundary starts here and it comes up and around. As you can see, there's multicolors in here, and each color represents a land use, whether it's residential, low, medium, high residential, there's industrial, and then there's commercial in here as well. The second boundary is a planning area boundary. And again, our current general plan shows that all as ag, but we want to let the county know that we consider this all as part of Newman. What we would like to recommend to the city council is and have a discussion on is which boundary should we say is our urban growth limit, meaning we will not exceed these growth boundaries at least up till 2050 if approved by the electorate. Meaning we want to submit it to the vote of the county residents. All the residents look at the map and say, not individually, it's going to be countywide again. We think that those are appropriate boundaries for urbanized areas. We want everything else to be preserved for ag land. So each city is now going back and trying to determine what they think is an appropriate growth boundary for them for the next 38 years. Now, as part of that, then what happens at 2050? Does everything go out the window? No. We'll build in something. There would be language in there, we think, where the electorate can come back again and make a determination. And cities can come back and say, okay, this is where we're at 2050. We're going to keep the same boundaries, or do we expand the boundaries and then the people can vote on it again? So I guess what we're asking you tonight is, one, I wanted to just have a little discussion about what you think about the mayor's concept for ag preservation. Second, what we would like to do and what we think is the appropriate action is defer this matter to your planning commission, who's your land use advisory board, get a recommendation from them, and then bring it back to you, at which time you make a final decision on what you think the final growth boundary should be, if this is going to be submitted to the Stanislaus County electorate. So, I know I've kind of talked in circles a lot. Mayor, did I?
I think you covered
Makes
all
sense.
the highlights and basis of it. And again, this has been going on for several years, a lot of discussion, and I think finally nuts and bolts when we finally all came together and countywide, all the mayors and city managers, and to try to get this discussion on the table to see where we're going to go with the land ag preservation and our growth. So the idea is each city looked at their growth boundaries and everything, and then we had one giant map that showed the whole county and all 9 cities. So we felt, we wanted to bring it to our council, get some input from the council, how they felt and what your thoughts were in terms of, where we'd like to see our city go. And given the fact that, we've already got our general plan that we're kind of following anyway, and again, we are the only city in Stanislaus County that has a complete general plan.
So maybe the first question, Mayor, is, as a council, does this council as a whole support ag preservation within Stanislaus County, and do you think that the method that we're describing is an appropriate way to go about ag preservation?
I don't know, Michael. The only thing that bothers me more than anything is, we spent a lot of money, a lot of time to do a general plan. And other cities have failed to do it. And I think when you do a project like this, it has to be a complete package. It can't be just a certain area you're going to preserve. I mean, they have to understand where the growth's going to take place and everything else. And these cities have failed. They're obligated to review their general plan periodically, and they have failed completely. I don't know, Michael. I think this is good. It looks good on the surface, but I'm just saying I get concerned about cities that have failed to fulfill their obligation on their general plan.
And there were multiple persons and or agencies, I guess you could say, that had some concern with one particular city who just drew this white glob that basically took up almost 15% of the whole county, saying, okay, that's where we're going to grow. And we were all concerned. But I think what we need to step back and really evaluate is we can't control other cities. We can only control ourselves. So the pros and cons to this and they're one and the same on this particular one, is we are limiting our boundaries. But because we've gone through the process and we've adopted a general plan, we can be really confident that what we've already adopted is what it is, and we don't really have to change it, because
No, I agree.
we look at it and say, look, we went through the general plan process. We look at where our growth boundaries are going to be. We looked at where our growth is going to occur, and we're comfortable saying this is our boundary and it matches what's on our general plan.
And I've shared that with the other 8 cities as well, that we've gone through the process, so we kind of know the direction we're going.
Oh, yeah.
And
We know better than anyone else.
yeah, so when Michael and I attended the meeting together, we sat and we listened, but also with, I guess, for me, with the comfort of knowing, well, we kind of know what our direction is, our general plan's completed, and Michael's right, we can only be concerned about what we do as a city, and we are far ahead of the other 8 cities. So, but I think it's a good, if you will, starting point, and the other cities look at us as Newman has kind of taken the lead already, and so we're leaps and bounds ahead of them, and we know what our boundaries are, and we can only control our own destiny.
My question, looking at this, it's like you say, this is pretty much, even if we build out to this, we'll still be within everything we wanted to be in. But I believe, and Ed, we were talking about this the other night, this is a county-wide vote.
That's correct. Right.
Could they mess with us?
They
Because
cannot. No, they cannot. Each city will set their own boundaries. The vote of the people is either yes, we accept those boundaries, or no, we don't accept those boundaries. That's the limit. It's not okay. We want Newman to cut back. We want the other ones to cut back. I think when you see we're not showing a big map as a whole because each city is going back. I took a map to the county and put it, and it's on a bigger map, and it just matches our general plan. It was a great place to start from my perspective. And each city drew their own map, and some match their general plans, and others do not. Nowhere close to it. But when you put those all on a map, and then you white out those areas, and you put everything else green, there's a lot of ag land that's being preserved.
Yep.
So I think when people look at it and say, "Wow, that's."
Which should be preserved.
There's a lot we're preserving. This is a good measure that preserves countywide, preserves a lot of ag land.
And I think that's really a huge part of the dialogue that has been had, again, with former Supervisor Grover and now with Supervisor O'Brien taking the lead. All 9 cities, it's good dialogue that's being had, and everybody has the same interests in land ag preservation, and so a couple of cities have already taken it to their planning commissions, and I told them that we'd be presented to our council tonight with the idea that we would recommend that it be taken to our planning commission and have them review it.
I guess my big question is, what if if the vote is no, what does that do to us?
That's nothing.
Yeah.
Does nothing to us?
We continue to develop in accordance with our general plan.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right.
At the vote yes, we continue to develop in accordance with our
Yeah.
general plan.
Yeah. Again, our destiny is pretty much already set. So
Yeah. The reality is, I think this more affects agencies like Riverbank and Oakdale that are growing together, Ceres and Modesto, and potentially Turlock that could be one. If you think about it, if Turlock keeps growing and Ceres is growing, maybe Keys gets a development. I mean, really think about just that. Think 30 years from now, in that highway corridor there, that just one big one, and whether it's residential or you have the ethanol plant there, another big plant on the other side. I mean, how far is Patches from the ethanol plant? They're not that far.
Half a mile.
And then at Keys there, at Keys intersection there's, I think a refrigeration place, and there's a commercial strip mall with a gas station on the east side. Am I wrong?
Yeah, you're right.
And then there's a restaurant, and then Patches. They're not that far apart. So really, how do we preserve and try to keep some open space going on there? And how do we prevent Ceres from growing into Houston? And how do we really, if we're really serious about ag preservation, the best thing to do is to say, look, we're not going to grow in those areas. That's ag. for us, it's really easy. We've already defined our boundaries.
Yes.
We've already gone through the general plan process. If it's a yay vote, okay, we develop in accordance with our general plan. If it's a no vote, okay, we develop in accordance with our general plan. I don't.
But you know what so often dictates how land use is based on the location
Sure.
and what they actually can put there and the value of the land use
Infrastructure,
stuff.
transportation corridors.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And all
But if we know what those are, if you know where your growth and urbanized areas are, then you can really start focusing on what the transportation corridors need to
Yeah.
be to connect those and really start developing some bigger plans. And I think ag preservation is a jump off point, but I think that then goes into regional transportation networks or RTIF. You know, the county adopted a regional transportation impact fee. You know, the cities, were in disagreement with that. The county said, okay, go out and cities work together in the next 18 months, see if you can come back with a regional transportation fee that gets everybody happy. If we have some growth limits on everybody, then we know what those corridors are and we can start figuring out what that fee needs to be. And it really, one starts playing on the others. So hopefully it'll even get into maybe, ultimately there's some city managers, myself included, that think how do we stop competing with each other? Maybe we need to start pooling sales tax funds, and distributing it that way, as opposed to because sales tax is now such a huge general fund source of income. Every city's fighting against every city for general fund, and it pits cities versus cities, Modesto versus the county versus Oakdale and Newman. If we had a big pool and we were working county-wide to bring all that in, it didn't matter where that went in Stanislaus County because we're all sharing some of the benefits in it. So, that's where ultimately we'd like to go, but there's challenges to that. Everybody wants local control and nobody wants to give up anything. So anyways, again, if I've, hopefully clearly demonstrated what we and the city and the mayors have worked together to form, we would ask that you send this off to your planning commission in October. We would have a discussion with them. They would come back with a recommendation to you. Really, you only have two real choices here. Do you just take your boundary here on the inside boundary, or do you take your outside boundary? It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. We've already identified that that's ultimately considered part of Newman. So,
Can that be changed later on?
2050.
it could be changed in 2050
I mean before 2050. The general plan is fluid. You can change it as things go along.
And that's the whole thing. Let's take a worst or best case scenario, however you want to interpret it. The measure goes off. We take the second line, okay? The measure goes off to the voters November of 2012. They come back. They accept it. We have a 2030 general plan. It says this is going to be till 2050. You have to recall, this area is all white. It's all planned for urbanization. We can go back and change what's in our white area. We can shuffle around the land uses that are in that white area because the voters have already approved that and they've accepted that that's going to be urbanized area. We locally make the land use decisions on what transpires in our white area, urbanized area.
We just couldn't, till 2050, we could not go into the green area. I believe that's the way.
Not necessarily. If we put this second line as our 2050 boundary, then we could go up to that line, which basically takes you out the Easton Road. The reality is, though, for most of you who we had a conversation the other day with the Army Corps of Engineers. That project's continuing to evolve. They want to put the Chevron levee on the inside, eastern edge of the canal. of the CCID canal. So that puts that right along this line right here. It's about 120 feet inside that canal. So if that's your chevron levee, you're never going on the other side anyways, because it's in the flood zone. And we just spent $40 million on the flood protection.
I thought we got rid
Down
of the
there.
Army Corps of Engineers.
Oh no,
They're still around?
They keep coming back.
They keep wanting to spend our money.
Yeah.
They want us to drill holes and get
Right.
core samples.
So what that does is really just dictate that this Newman will grow out in these areas. Next. And what we got to do is, here's the county line right here. That doesn't make any sense. When our supervisor, when we explained it to him, I think he'll support moving the county line along here and moving it to the wasteway. It makes a lot more sense. I mean, really, does any of this land have any tie to Merced County? It doesn't. Think about it. All this land right here over the wasteway or waterway, it has no tie to Merced County. All of this land has a tie to Newman and Stanislaus County. It makes sense for that county line to come along that wasteway there and then join in right there. Right, Supervisor?
They would probably give it up anyway.
I'm sure they would. So, and I'm sure our supervisor would take it.
I'm sure.
So anyways, if I can be a bit further assistance or clarification.
Any questions of Michael? Does it sound okay to you guys? I mean, to go ahead and send this on to our planning commission?
Do we need to make a motion on that to send it to the planning commission? I'd make a motion, we send it to the planning commission for their review.
I second that.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, take it to the planning commission.
Okay, now if we'd like to bring back item 10, 9A.
Well,
Okay, 1 second.
to do that, one of us has got to make a
Wow.
motion to do it.
While Mike was talking to the chief, Mayor and Council, you need to just, and you can always do this, so just waive your procedural rules. So make a motion to waive your procedural rules first. Then you make a motion to rescind the motion you made to continue the public hearing. And then make a motion to reopen the public hearing tonight. And you can just say what he said, the three things that he said will suffice.
Okay.
Is there a motion by this council to do what our city attorney just said?
Motion to with the city attorney.
I'll second that motion.
There's been a motion and a second to do what our city attorney just advised us to do. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Is that good enough?
Now you're good to go.
All right. Chief, you're back up.
All right, good evening again. We made some adjustments to attachment A. Obviously, you won't have them in front of you, but I'll break them down for you and we'll provide you with a list at a later time when we can get to a computer and type it out. So the $10,000 for overtime funds will still stay the same. $21,000 for emergency dispatch. That was an overage that we originally budgeted on a best case scenario going from last year. We received a letter later saying that there was an increase. We were going to come back at mid-year for the increase. This could be offset by that, which would be $21,000. So two would still change from $90,000 to $21,000. $14,000 for Stanislaus County Drug Enforcement Agency to join back in their contract. Instead of getting charged for their services on an hourly rate when they come out here, this would be the insurance policy that we opted out of a few years ago, getting back in with them, and it allows us to take place in some of their overtime things that they've been doing throughout the county. $44,000 would be item 4 for part-time employees. Our reserves, it would add the additional $44,000 to our reserves, which would help us staff for people taking vacations and things like that, which we're already doing, but it would just move that into the general fund.
How much was that, Chief?
$44,000. Item 5 would be training, $5,000 for additional training for our officers. We'll send more schools this year. And item 6 would be technology, additional cameras, software that we might need throughout the year would be an additional $6,000, which would take us to the $100,000. With that, I can answer any questions, or try to.
I, just a question on the participation with the drug enforcement. I always kind of had a concern, even when we did participate. Just, you know, I always kind of felt like we never really got the bang for our buck.
Throughout several meetings with them that I've been going to, times have changed. I think Newman back in those days was the outcast city, and there's more collaboration throughout the county. And you have seen them actually come out when they were doing their gang suppression. They've already been out in the city at least 3 times doing gang suppression with Stanislaus County Drug Enforcement Agency. So those were some of our concerns as why we opted out. But with talking to the new administration and the new heads, that we feel comfortable that this is where we belong, because let's face it, we get one drug lab like we had last year and we're going to eat up this money anyway. If we get 2 where I'm coming to you begging for money to pay the bill. And I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to use these funds in a positive light to, you know, join back up. But we're the only city in the county that's not participating.
And with that, Chief, would that also mean that that they would assist with some investigative work, i.e., you know, sometimes we get leads, sometimes we get complaints, sometimes, you know, somebody suspects that there's things going on. Would they actually actively be able to help us out in those situations? I mean, in terms of manpower, if we suspect, you know, let's say I was throwing out a particular house or a particular location, you know, is suspected of you know, drug dealing, for instance.
If we called for their services, they would bill us hourly.
Okay.
Without the contract. Anytime we contact them and they made that perfectly clear in letters and phone calls, that anytime we contact them for anything, if one of our officers late at night rolls across the lab and picks up the phone and calls them for advice, they're going to bill us hourly.
Is there a limit to how much use we can get if we enter into the contract with them?
No. We belong just like everybody else. We're a player.
And I don't know how it was when I was an SDEA. But in order to share an asset forfeiture, you have to have a person over there, right? So this would just be they're utilizing them as an investigative tool. Correct. So we wouldn't share in any asset forfeiture.
I believe if the asset forfeiture came from the city, from an investigation out of our city, then we would share in it. If it's, and I'm not 100% sure on this, I'd have to get back to you on that, but I believe anything it's city where it originated. So if it originates in the county shares with Stanislaus County Drug Enforcement Agency. But their asset forfeiture also, you know, supplies their cars. That's how they're funded. So we would benefit from it. I mean, just not
directly.
We wouldn't, you know, it wouldn't go back into our bank account.
Any other questions of the chief? Does that satisfy everybody?
I'm happy.
Okay.
I'm happy if you're happy.
Okay, then with that, for the public hearing, we can open the public hearing now, correct? Okay, public hearing regarding the authorizing the SLIF and authorizing expenditures for this funding under AB 1913 is open. Anybody wish to address the council? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council for direction.
I'd make a motion that, however we got it set, we adopt what's this one? That we authorize the expenditures for this funding of the Supplemental Law Enforcement Services Fund as projected by the police chief in his latest staff report.
I second that.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks.
I apologize
All right.
and thank you.
No problem. Okay. Well, now we'll move on down to item 11, items from the District 5 Supervisor Jim D. Martini.
Good evening, Mayor Gaten, council members. I just have a few things tonight and one comment to make about your growth boundaries. First of all, the task force, the healthcare task force meets on Thursday, this Thursday, the 29th. We're now meeting at 6 o'clock rather than 6:30. We will be meeting at City Hall in Gustine, where we'll do some planning for our way out, which is October 15th. And then to come up with the theme for the essay and the calendar for this next year, and to discuss some grant funding and options for next year. So I hope the way out's going well here in Newman. I've lost 9 pounds. It hasn't been easy, I'll tell you, but I've been making an effort to do it, and hopefully I can stand up here next year and still have that 9 pounds lost. But anyway, Thursday, 29th. I think it's an important meeting because we're planning for next year and also have to really organize this way out and what we're going to do there. As far as the flood control project, I still have not at least received anything. Nothing's come across my desk. What I'm going to do is talk to Congressman Denham about this project and try and get him up to speed on it. I'm not really sure how much he knows about it. I know him fairly well. And whether or not even Cardozo runs again is kind of in question. And if he does, he would be in Merced County. So this area would be in Denham's district, assuming he wins in November. So I will deal with him and his chief of staff to try and give him some kind of history on the project. Because federal support has been essential to keep this project going. It's and it has been like a jobs program for the Corps of Engineers, but we're relatively close now. We can't give up on it. So I will do that next time I see him, which will be fairly soon. Then our monthly mayors and city manager meeting will be in this Thursday. I don't know if Michael can make it or not. I checked with Patterson. They will be there, and this time it will be at 7 o'clock at Mills. That was all I was prepared to say, but I really don't want to step down without making some type of comment about your growth boundaries, because this is going to be probably a significant issue next year. And I've been on LAFCO for 4 years, and I put the ag mitigation on the LAFCO agenda a few months back because we could never get any kind of both growth boundaries or anything done, so we were going to use that, which is the same thing the county has done. Then the building association comes and they say, well, no, we want, we'll just do growth boundaries. And I'm not opposed to boundaries, but the boundaries have to be realistic. And if you put your boundaries out so far, I'd say the most egregious one is Oakdale in Houston. And although, I still think it's, I don't know if you can ever put that one back up, because I know a lot about this. You can't put your boundaries like Oakdale out 10 miles out of town and call that a growth boundary. That's not realistic, and that's just never going to fly. And LAFCO will have to come back and do ag mitigation on towns like that when they're 10 times the size that they are, and they call that a growth boundary. If you look at the city of Newman, this is the size you are now in the colored part, not the yellow, but you can see where the town is. That's how much you've grown in the last 100 years. Now, if you're going to go out to the green area there, that's probably 5 times the size of Newman, I would say, just without taking a ruler out and measuring that. That's not realistic to call that your 38-year boundary. I would say that especially in this climate, you'd be lucky to even go out to your sphere of influence and build that in 38 years. But boundaries for the cities have to be hard boundaries. If you're really concerned about preserving ag land, which I had a question if the cities really are, but that's what we're going to be discussing this next year. There has to be a real hard boundary. Other counties do this. In Yolo County has hard boundaries for their cities where residential building is off limits to 92% of Yolo County. Ventura County has policies. Napa County has went to great efforts to preserve their agricultural land because they realize what a asset that it is. It's unique natural resource deserves to be protected. But when you limit your boundaries, you grow up instead of out, and you quit sprawling, and you have more compact growth. And I think this is, where all California is going to have to go. If we don't deal with this issue in a realistic way now, we're going to look like Santa Clara County. And I don't know, what people 200 years ago will think of us if all the ag land is gone. But if you move your boundaries out to unrealistic proportions, the way yours is bad enough, but Oakdale and Houston are just absolutely atrocious. You're not setting a boundary at all. You will never go out to your general plan area ever in 100 years. And to call that your 2050 boundary is unrealistic. And LAFCO will have to deal with this regardless of what the county votes. If that's going to be your boundary, because that's no boundary at all. And realistically, anybody who knows what your absorption rate is and how much land you have there, you will never even come close to that by 2050. So I just wanted to make these points because this is, it's going to be a lot of back and forth on this. Supervisor O'Brien and I are on opposite ends of this. And I think we'd all like to get something done, but how we do it is what's going to be, I think, the debate of next year. And we need to debate this, but remember that the LAFCO is really not going to be bound by this. And any time that you want to go out and annex land, you're going to have to go through LAFCO. And LAFCO still has the ability, and the Building Association knows this, that we can impose ag mitigation regardless of what the county vote is, if these boundaries we feel are unrealistic. And if you look at what the map it was never really submitted to LAFCO, but we did see it in an easel form. You could start out in Tuolumne County, drive through Oakdale, go through Riverbank, turn and go all the way through Modesto, come around and go through Ceres, and wind up in Houston, and never realize that you've entered or left one city, unless there was a road sign there that says, welcome to Houston. It is a solid mass of houses and buildings, all urbanized. There is no agricultural land protected at all under that kind of scenario. And I just really want to make the point that the hard boundaries have to be realistic. They have to take into account your absorption rate, and I don't think that the cities are doing that. Some cities are a little better than others, but let's be realistic, because if the point is to preserve ag land and have a boundary where you're not going to grow, it has to be realistic. I wasn't prepared to come here to talk about that tonight, but it is an issue with LAFCO, and I just wanted to make that point. Don't put out your boundaries so far that you couldn't realistically get out there by 2050 anyway and call that a boundary, because that's business as usual if you do that. The decision, of course, is yours, but I couldn't resist, giving you.
Well, I appreciate your comments, Jim, but I think, as a city and as our staff, as we look at our maps, whether or not we could achieve those goals in 50 years, who knows? I think our boundaries that we looked at are somewhat realistic, and I think you got to set your tone for your growth over the 30, 50 years. And I think as a collaborative effort on everybody's part, to work with the county and LAFCO, I think as a city, we don't want to feel like we're stifled and stymied by LAFCO and by the county as well. And sometimes you get that feeling that the county is playing big brother and LAFCO and saying, well, you can't do this, we're not going to allow you to do that, we're not going to allow you to do this. And I think cities should be allowed to see where their sphere is going to go, to see where their growth's going to go. Whether that be 50 years or 100 years, who knows? We may hit that big spurt again. Who knows? But I think ours is more realistic than Oakdale's.
Oh, there's no question about that.
You know,
I just wanted to make the point that since you're here tonight, you know, at least I'm here. And this is
and
an
I
issue.
think that the important thing that I see is there's starting to be some dialogue had, and that's a huge step in my mind that, you know, cities aren't meeting secretively in the county and LAFCO. We're trying to bring everybody together so we all are on the same page, and we as a city of Newman, we're trying to plan for our future. We're trying to see, and we're hoping that councils that sit here after us will look back and say, geez, those 5 people and their city staff had it together. You know, they made some good decisions, and those who sit here later, hopefully they'll make decisions, and people who come after them will see that some good decisions were made. But I think it's a starting point, is the way I see it, and at least there's being some open dialogue, and that's important. And it's more of, hey, let's all sit down, let's talk, you know, and see where the boundaries are, see where you're going to go, without having somebody say, well, you can't do that. You know, for me, that just, you know, I don't like people saying, we're not going to allow you to do that, or let us see where our boundaries are, and let's see if it's something that's tangible that we all can work together on. And again, we control our own destiny. I don't care so much about what the other cities do, but I think it's a good collaborative effort that we're all talking, and that's the main
Yeah,
point.
this is the first time. You know, I really think that if there's a countywide vote, it should be city by city. The people in Oakdale have no business telling you what your boundaries should be, and it really should be city by city rather than the entire county voting on one plan. We haven't got that far down the road yet.
And it's like Michael said, you know, we've updated our general plan one way or the other. We know what we're going to do, yes, no, or otherwise. We're sticking with our general plan, and we know where we want to go, and whether that happens in 20 years, 25 years, 30, 50 years, you know, we'll address our general plan again as time goes on. You know, we may not be here, you know, but others, you know, that follow us will be tasked with going through that same process that this council just completed.
You know, the thing to look at is what other counties have done too. I'm glad the dialogue's going, because the county, Stanislaus County is out of the development business. Measure E has put us out. We didn't really want to be in it anyway. The last thing that we have left is Salida, and Modesto might even take that maybe someday. But so, you know, we're out of it. The growth needs to be within the cities. And because as we've had, during the building boom, I've had awful projects come, you know, across my desk to get support. One was a 1,500-acre residential development in Wesley. Terrible, you know. I mean, and another one I remember very distinctly was a 600-acre residential project in Hickman. That's not what, you know. We got 9 cities here, and that's where it needs to be.
Let's not forget to mention the gravel pit that wants to come in just outside of our boundaries
Yeah,
too.
that's. I'm sure that's going to be. I didn't have anything to do with that.
Excuse me, I was sitting at the table with you when you brought them to our council chambers, and when we had some earlier discussion with them.
Well,
I'm not saying you brought them, just simply
you
saying.
needed to talk to them
Well,
because I wanted
yeah, I
to be
understand
sure,
that.
so you have a chance to.
They also don't think they need an EIR either.
Well, that's unrealistic. I mean, you know, there's no shortage of issues, and land use is a really important issue.
It is,
And-
and again, I think the important thing, the important aspect of this whole thing is there's some dialogue, and that's what's important. And hopefully, well, I know it's not going to be achieved at the next meeting or the meeting following that, but at least there's some open dialogue going. And I thought the meeting that we attended was good. I mean, there was good discussion all the way across the room from county personnel to cities and city attorneys and city managers, and so that's a good point to have, so.
Well, one of the things I just want to leave you with is the absorption rate should be kind of a determining factor. And if you're absorbing, I'll just make these numbers up. I mean, if you're absorbing 20 acres a year, don't put out your growth boundaries well past what you can possibly grow in 38 years, the way Oakdale has, or Houston. So, I mean, you guys are a little bit much better than others, but just, be realistic. And, a growth boundary is, it's a hard boundary. It should be within your absorption rate for that amount of time, and not, so far out of town the way Oakdale has it. You'll never get there in 200 years, and they're going to call that a growth boundary. It's unrealistic. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Any other comments, questions? Okay, we'll go to item 12, items from the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. With all due respect to the supervisor, I think the county needs to kind of look at their map too, because this isn't just a city thing, this is a county thing as well. You can look at where their staff drew their maps. Every single intersection on I-5 is developed. You should see the white spot around Diablo Grande. You should see the white spot around Crow's Landing. For anyone to think that the county is not in the development business, it's ludicrous. They are in the development business. They just don't have to put up with the residential. They're in the commercial and industrial development business where all the jobs are, and they don't have to provide all the extra services. So this is a two-way street, and this is something that the county and the cities need to work together on if we're going to get this thing to collaborate. It's not a city issue, like some people would like you to think it is, and there are plenty of people on the east side that think that. This is really a county-wide issue, and it's all the agencies, including the county as well. So, the fact that, the county can support, and we don't know yet what their recommendation is going to be, but a 400-acre gravel mining pit within 1 mile of the city's boundary on prime ag land that will never be returned to ag, because they want to leave it an 80-foot deep pit. That's not agriculture. That's not ag preservation. And what they'll say is, well, we're mining the resources because that's allowed in our general plan, and, it is. That's not. Are we preserving ag land? What's the difference between 400-acre, 80-foot deep hole and some residential uses or commercial and industrial uses? Or what's the difference? Or out at a solar plant out at Crow's Landing. That's not an ag use. A solar plant's not an ag use, and I know the county's looking at putting in some solar plants. So, I think it goes both ways, and I think the conversation, if it's going to get real and we are going to do something like Jim talked about in Ventura County and be very progressive, like, Napa or something like that, the rhetoric's got to stop, and we got to really work together to figure out what the answer is. So, hopefully, I think this has the potential to get some legs. If, as Jim said, everybody can be realistic in what they're shooting for and trying to do something by 2050. But the idea is how much, it increases density and a few other things.
Michael, don't you think that the cities are looking at it entirely different? It's not everybody has the same thing in mind when they're drawing up their.
No, because every city's different. You could, case in point, the mayor from Oakdale is much different than the mayor we have. She just do this big, huge swath that just took in.
Yeah, but you should all be using the same parameters as far as how you're going to.
But every community's priorities and values are a little bit different. So you look at it from your own priorities and you look at it from your own values, and then you got to set realistic boundaries for yourself and say, you know what, I'm not going to hoard it all. I think this will work for us. What makes, I think the mayors and definitely the city managers and the planning directors, because they're involved too, what makes us nervous is we say this is our 2050 line, it gets approved, 2045 comes around and people are like, no, that's your line. You're not getting any bigger than ever. And then now you're restricted to this. A line that we thought was only going to be 38 years actually turns out to be 50 years. And the way the state almost requires cities to develop to keep their revenue streams up. I mean, all land use decisions are fiscal decisions. I mean, they're not just land use decisions, they're fiscal decisions that we have to keep our revenues up in order to continue to provide services to our residents. I mean, we have communities, not too far from here that, maybe didn't get any development and they struggle. They're really challenged with their general fund. We've been blessed where our general fund's a little bit healthier. So some of the decisions that are being made up in Sacramento are really dictating our fiscal and land use decisions locally. So it's a challenge. I mean, how do you create those revenues, without that? So, I think it's a good measure. We'll continue to have this conversation. I don't think it's a city issue. It really is a county-wide issue, I think. And I would encourage Supervisor DeMartini to go back and look at the areas and the maps, if you will, that the county drew for themselves and really say, are those realistic? I mean, I look at Diablo Grande up there and it's a huge white spot in the middle of nowhere. Maybe a third of the size of ours. And they're a lot less than we are. So, I mean, is that realistic?
Well, and I think it was very ambiguous of them to think that was going to be a $30,000 or 30,000 people community up there, personal community as well, with schools. There was a lot of promises that were made to our school district. Well, when that project first came to fruition, in terms of what their growth was, there's going to be schools up there, stores up there, churches up there, and yada, 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 and we've seen what has happened. And that's why that huge white spot is still there. They still think they're going to build out to. That's not going to happen.
The problems we're faced with as a community is everybody outside this community thinks they know what's best for our community.
Right.
And it starts at the federal government. It goes down to the state government. And the county's not quite as bad as those two big ones. But then you got a LAFCO agency that, same thing. They think that they're, they should be making land use decisions in communities where, whether we have a rep on that right now or not, it's still people from outside our community making land use decisions for our community. It's challenging, and how do you get past that? We've been good steward of our resources. When everybody was doing this huge land grab and annexing, doing all these projects, what did we do? We called timeout. We're in the middle of our general plan. And thank God, because we probably have a bunch of half-built subdivisions out there that, we'd have to maintain the infrastructure and the roads and all of that, and they'd be deteriorating right now. We don't have that problem as bad as a lot of communities because we didn't go out and do all of that. So, but we're penalized because we're locked in with all the other communities that maybe did do that. So, anyways, I'll get off my my horse and move on to greater things. For those in the community who have not heard, the city of Newman received a Blueprint Award of Achievement for our downtown plaza. It's an award that is an 8-county award starting at San Joaquin County and going all the way down to Kern County. And so on October 13th, they will be having an award ceremony at Bass Lake in Madera County. And we will be sending a contingent of people there to go and receive our award for our downtown plaza. One of many we hope to receive. We believe we're gonna start submitting our downtown plaza, not only our downtown plaza but our downtown revitalization. If you really look at what we've done with our downtown over the last decade, there's a lot of revitalizations that's occurred. The theater, the plaza, the streetscape. Now purchasing the Oddfellows building. There's a lot that we've done to revitalize and keep our downtown alive. I think a lot of communities in the state are jealous and be envious and desirable of our downtown. So So anyways, again, I've talked to you each about that banquet. Please contact Mike as soon as you can let him know about, so we can secure tickets and places for everybody that wants to go.
And I'll be there already at
Yes,
the
he'll be there
conference
already.
for Stan Cogs. So.
Correct. So your ticket's already taken care of. They give us one additional one, and then we'll order the rest from there. We are now getting ready to get into October. I just want to throw it out there to the council again. Typically, the second meeting of November and the second meeting of December have been canceled due to Thanksgiving and Christmas. As staff, we plan to move forward with that routine again. So you might see a lot of things coming up in the next 2 to 3 meetings because we're just trying to get things done before the end of the year. So with your concurrence, we will move along with that schedule. Does anyone see any reason why or anticipate a need for either of those 2 meetings? I think most times the council has appreciated having those ones off because they are so close to Christmas and Thanksgiving. So, okay, then at this time we're gonna plan to have those meetings canceled unless something emergency comes up, but we'll try to get you ahead of time, let you know ahead of time. As Supervisor DeMartini indicated, Saturday, October 15th is the way out at Gustine. Right now, I think the time is anticipated to be about 10 a.m. for the way outs. Again, captain of our team, Mr. Mike Meyer, will be contacting all of our members to remind them, our teammates. And then the fall cleanup is beginning Monday, October 10th, and that runs through October 15th. Saturday the 15th. So make plans accordingly to get rid of your junk there. So with that, I don't have anything else unless the council would like to
Any
ask
questions,
any
City
questions.
Manager?
We heard something about an ice skating rink. I mean, is that something?
Oh, yes. Thank you. That's very... The date on that is October 12th. On October 12th, the Chamber of Commerce, and as well as partnering with the city, will be having a chicken dinner fundraiser. And this is the Louis J. They're half chicken dinner. They're going to be $10. There are members of the chamber that are selling them, as well as you can be purchasing them here at City Hall as well. All proceeds of that sale will go to bring an ice skating ring to accompany the Christmas tree lighting ceremony. So the idea is if we can raise enough funds through this fundraiser, we will be able to provide this activity free of charge to our residents. That's our goal. At worst case, it may just have a couple dollars or whatever, but it's going to be affordable to everybody, and we think it'll be a great complement to the Christmas tree lighting ceremony that's going to be taking place the first Saturday of December.
As long as I don't have to put on ice skates.
I heard a little bit about it. It's kind of unique because there's no water involved, no electricity, and all
Correct. It's not.
It's,
Yeah,
no, it's special.
It's artificial ice, if you will.
But it looked pretty cool.
Yeah, and they do it in shopping malls and in communities all over the country. This is a national company that'll come in and do this for us. So they use artificial ice. They bring in the ice skating. It's very hard to tell the difference between the two. It's actually geared towards beginners a little bit easier because you get a little bit more friction. It's not as slippery on there. So I think it'll be good for our community. To bring in a full-fledged ice skating ring is way beyond our fiscal means for this community. I mean, especially we're only bringing one in for 6 or 8 hours just for that particular purpose. Most of the ones that bring in permanent ice skating rings, like the one over by Tracy, the Paso Farms, the Also Farms, or whatever, they run theirs for a month long because the cost is so great. So I think it's very exciting. I mean, really, if you think about it, we're going to go to Christmas tree lighting ceremony, have an opportunity to ice skate on artificial ice. It's going to be a great time. I think people will have a great time with it. So, thank you.
Any questions, comments? Thanks, Michael.
Don't forget to buy your tickets.
Yeah.
Already bought it.
Chief?
Already got it.
Yeah.
Evening again. Just a reminder, October 8th is our low-cost animal clinic. You can get vouchers for spay and neuters, get shots right there on site for rabies and things like that. It's October 8th from 9 to 12 at Pioneer Park. Anybody have any questions? I'd be happy to answer.
Questions of the chief? Thank you, sir. Stephanie? Lou? No? Okay. Nick?
Nothing tonight.
Bob?
No, sir, nothing tonight.
Roberta?
I don't have anything.
Don?
Just a quick report out on the conference. It was an excellent conference. One of the things, and I didn't bring it tonight, was Tracy Creek, which in our city just north of us has they did a flood mitigation plan because of that, and I have some brochures I'll bring in for the council to review, and they actually utilized the Corps of Engineers and somebody else, and this was a consulting company, and they built a agricultural plain on both sides of Tracy Creek, which is what they utilized to, I guess it's called Tracy Creek, I can't remember for sure. That's what they utilized to mitigate their flood control problems they had up there. But I'll bring the brochures in from this company because they actually show how they did it. And I just happened to see it as I was walking through the exhibitors up there. So I thought it might be something we could at least talk to them or something like that. I mean, I know we get along so well with the Corps of Engineers and they move so quickly for us. We had several resolutions that were brought before the general election. Ed and I were both up there, and we turned down one that wanted to commend the new city manager and mayor of the city of Bell, because they're trying to straighten that city out, and we couldn't understand why they would want to commend people for doing a good job when every other city is having to do a good job. That didn't really go over very well with the general election. The mayor of Waterford brought one which was referred back, which was a tort reform, which it was loser pays. If you sue a city, what he's trying to do is cut down on frivolous lawsuits, and the language, the committees didn't really like it, so they're going to go back and do it, but it'll probably come back again next year. And so the city of Waterford may be asking us to assist them in pulling some statistics and stuff like that to help with that. And other than that, it was a great conference.
It was, and there was just the ability to network with other cities throughout the state of California, and there was a lot of good conversation, a lot of good dialogue. It just kind of reaffirms that we're not alone. We're not the only city that's suffering, but there's a lot of great speakers on a lot of different topics. Don and I attended many of the same outbreaks, different speakers that were speaking on different topics, and then we went to a couple of them separately. But it's always good that the conference is just a good opportunity to talk to other cities and city managers and city council members and mayors, and to see what the challenges are with those other cities, and they're much the same as ours. Some to a greater degree, and some not as bad. But it was a very good conference, and I forgot how many they said were there, how many cities were represented, and how I don't remember what it was, but it was
435 cities, I believe, were represented there.
Yeah, it was, but it was good. It was good.
I believe that's what they said at the last election thing.
Thanks. Anything else, Tom?
No.
Okay. And I don't know if everybody got, I just was in my mail on October 18th, the groundbreaking for the new juvenile justice commitment facility at 2215 Blue Gum. So I think there's a general invitation for everybody if you can attend that. Be good. And then again, I'll be in Bass Lake with Stan Cog for the executive board, attending the regional planning meeting. And then I got the email notice and a letter about the Blueprint Award. So it's pretty exciting stuff. And I talked to Mayor Spriggs in San Francisco about it. And so I think, Stephanie, did you submit the city staff submitted the application, and I forgot exactly what he said, but we were selected and everybody was excited about our project and how it turned out and everything. So it's kind of an exciting time for us to get an award for that, the Blueprint Award. So hopefully some of you will be able to come up and along with the city staff. So with that, I think that's all we got. If there's no other comments or questions or anything, we'll adjourn.